Well, welcome back to Wake Up WA. Coming in now is our regular guest, Peter Fitzpatrick from the Motor Trade Association, to tell us a little bit more about the waste oil debacle. Did you know there's over 50 million litres, I think it was, that is of waste oil, just we don't know what to do with every year, that comes from the servicing of cars? Well, here to tell us a bit more, Peter Fitzpatrick, welcome.
Good morning, Matt. Good morning, Eddie.
Did I get it right? 50 million litres?
We use 50 million litres a year of oil. They call them megalitres is the nice way. It's a sort of a shorthand way of referring to them. So 50 megalitres of oil comes in to the state each year or is produced here, and that's used for servicing vehicles, trucks, the mining industry and so on. Only about 35 to 40 million litres of that's recovered each year. So there's a sort of about a 5 to 10 million, maybe 15 million litre sort of surplus there that we're not quite sure where that is. Now, a lot of that obviously will still be in vehicles themselves. It'll be in written-off vehicles. It'll be maybe stored in sheds where someone's done a service on their car and is sitting around. There's probably at any given day, there's probably, there could be anything up to 5-7 million litres just sitting in workshops in other places where it's sort of been taken out of vehicles. But the problem that we've got is we don't have a market for it. So all of the repair businesses out there have all got this masses of waste oil, which is very, very dangerous environmentally. I'm sure you can imagine if this gets into the environment, because you only need 1 litre of oil to contaminate 1 million litres of water. And if you look at Perth, it sits right on top of a large sort of aquifer, really, with the artesian bore. We've got the Nangara Mound and we've got the Swan Canning sort of catchment area. So if that starts to find its way into the drinking water or into the river systems, you can imagine the sort of devastation that's going to occur there. So we've got a major sort of failure here, if you like, of what was started out as a product steward system out of Canberra, where every litre of oil, 5.5 cents a litre, is taken off the producers and stuck in a fund in Canberra, and then that's supposed to then fund markets for used oil. And that hasn't worked.
So what happens to the oil now? Once if I take my car in for a service, the guys dutifully change the oil. What happens to that oil?
Well, what should happen? What happens now is it's being stuck into a big drum out the back or a bunded area that's and increasingly those number of drums.
Those rooms just grow and grow and grow with these tubs of oil.
Right. So and every litre on every service on your car is about 4 to 5 litres of oil. On a truck, it can be up to 100 litres of oil. So you're talking about big quantities of oil. What should then happen is we have 2 collection companies or recycling companies in WA. There's Nationwide and Ren Oil are the 2 companies. They're independent in some ways, but they've got a couple of joint ventures as well. They then take it away and they de-water it, and they get a lot of the sludge and stuff out of it, and it can be used as burner oil. For for furnaces, and at a high temperature, it is a good solution. Environmentalists run around sort of getting worried about it, but compared to coal, it's certainly a better solution. Now, we did have a market for that for a lime kiln out at Kalgoorlie, but that market's fallen over. They're not using it anymore.
Why was that?
They changed to gas, or I think it was a better option for them. So that market dried up. So we've been sending some to Singapore by ship. But what we have now is all of these, there's a whole lot of tanks down in Fremantle, North Fremantle, all full of this gluggy oil. In fact, it's probably the worst part of the oil, called the bottoms, is the sort of in-house name for it. And it's all the stuff that's been drained off, and you've got all this gluggy mess at the bottom. And that can be re-refined, or you can add different types of oil to it, and you can make it then attractive as a burner oil. So we've been sending some to Christmas Island and some to Singapore. But to ship offshore, you've got to have all these approvals. There's a Basel Convention, it's called, which was a convention signed for moving noxious wastes around the world in the city of Basel some years ago. So there's, it's a bit tricky when you start taking it offshore, because you've got to get international approvals to do it. What I want to see happen is I think we should be putting in a re-refining facility here in WA. We've already had some proposals come forward, one to actually what's called lube to turn it back into oil, which I think is a smart move. And the other one is a sort of a re-refining process that out the other end you get kerosene and low-grade diesel. But it's still a more effective use than just shipping it off to another country, dumping all your gluggy oil in Singapore into a furnace somewhere. There's another proposal to ship it all around the eastern states and build a great big lube-to-lube facility on the eastern coast. I don't like that idea. I think it's stupid, because if we were to sign long-term contracts to get rid of our oil, for the next 20 years we're going to be having tankers full of this stuff going along our pristine southern coastline across some of the best fishing areas of Australia. And any one of those tankers...
what happens if something were to happen,
absolutely,
heaven forbid, if there's an oil...
Well, you can imagine a huge tanker full of this gluggy bottoms oil sort of running aground or getting caught up in a storm and capsizing or something in the Southern Ocean. So I think we've got to look at something smarter than this. So I'm going to be pushing the buttons of the federal politicians of this coming election, saying it's time you put some money in out of this fund we've had in Canberra, and even if you put some of your own money in, and the state government might have to chip in as well, let's give somebody a hand to, and there are enough proposals out there to build a decent facility here for recycling our waste oil, so that we can deal with it here and turn it into something useful, rather than putting in ships and sending it off to Christmas Island and Singapore and other parts of Asia, or moving it around the coast. And I think that's a much better solution than even using it as burner oil, because you're actually getting a product back. Bear in mind, Australia's going from 84% self-sufficiency in oil right now to 20% self-sufficiency by 2020. So we're going to be struggling to get enough oil in the years ahead. So let's start recycling the stuff.
And it makes more sense, I suppose, to just be shifting the problem around the world to actually be reusing it. So you're actually turning a problem into a solution. So it makes a lot of sense to me to build a facility here in WA. So is there anything that with people with this oil from doing their own service changes at home can do to alleviate any of the problems with the waste oil?
Well, I'll tell you what they can't do and they shouldn't do, and that's stick it in the rubbish bin. We've seen some of those occur, and it gets caught up then and it goes into landfill, which then finds its way into the water system. So and you can't just dispose of it down the drain, because that normally goes into some sort of sewer, or in many cases it'll go into a stream that runs into the river system. So the local government, local councils normally have an oil collection point, and that's where people, if they're doing their home servicing, they certainly should do that. Ideally, they should go to obviously one of my members to have their car serviced, and then the member will make sure that that's disposed of. But the problem that the service people have right now is that there's the two recycling companies have got all these tanks all backed up down at Fremantle and other places. So there's unless they get another shipload, and the ships normally take about 6 to 9 megalitres when they go, which can relieve quite a bit of it. But we're backed up about 25 megalitres and probably about 10 megalitres out in industry at the moment. So we've got a major blockage, and I'm not going to let the politicians walk away from this one, because if this starts to become a bigger problem, and it's already a big problem, what I don't want to see is illegal dumping going on, because we could have an absolute environmental catastrophe
what
here.
probably is bound to happen if something isn't done quickly.
And it's a usable product. It's not exactly as if it's an enormously toxic. We're not dealing with some sort of chemical product here that that's dangerous to people. It's reasonably stable in the sense that if it's kept in containers, it's not going to explode or anything. It does have one problem, I suppose, in that one of the problems for the insurance companies, you've got all these repair shops out there all loaded up with oil. So it creates a problem for them and for their insurance policies, because the last thing in the world you want is a bit of a flash fire in a workshop, and it's sort of packed up the back with oil. You can imagine what that's going to do in terms of a fire on those premises. So there is a problem from that sense, but it's not a toxic substance. It's a substance that could be turned into something really useful and something that we're going to need in the future.
So, Peter, it sounds like it's a problem that everybody has a vested interest in getting a solution to, and maybe the thing that we can all do is put a little bit of pressure, raise it into our consciousness, and put a little bit of pressure on our local members of parliament to tackle this as an environmental issue, as well as the popular ones that we're hearing about all the time. So, Peter, sorry?
Yeah, and I was just going to say, get onto this before it's too late.
Absolutely. Yeah, so Peter, thanks for raising our awareness of this issue again. We look forward to speaking to you again, hopefully next week.
Yes, I'll probably come maybe something a bit more, not so gloomy now.
That's all right.
But Monday morning it's a bit hard, but I think we need to know about these things, and
Absolutely.
I think it's important that the listeners out there or the viewers out there are focused on these things and get into those politicians. They've got to earn their keep. We've got an election coming up. Let's make them fix our problems.